Okay, I'm back again. Welcome to Tea at the Diet Household. I am going to make some meatballs to go with the pasta that we made. So I'm going to start showing you the process as I would do it. Now this recipe is really easy. You can replace and change ingredients as you want to, and this shouldn't be a too long a video. I'm probably going to stop it a couple of times so you'll see it jump at times as well, but we'll see how we get on. Right, so I have set myself up with a bowl to mix all of my meatballs in, and I have my 5% fat mince. It could be any mince, whichever you like, just don't use frozen. Any of you that have done burgers will know that frozen mince don't cling together very well, so they do need to be fresh mince. That's the only bit that's really a bit of a problem, and if you're anything like me at the moment, they're pretty tough to get hold of. So here we go. That's 500 grams of milk, 500 grams of mince. That's normally what I would do for my family, a family of 4. Okay, so I would normally use that for a bolognese as well. Pop it into the bag. It is obviously raw meat, so we do need to be conscious of our hands at this stage. And all I'm just going to do is just literally mush it up in the bowl. Nice. Okay. Now, there are a couple of things to add with this. Right, so one of the things I am going to add in, just to add it a little bit more flavour. Fresh herbs can be a lot more flavoursome than dried herbs. I can smell the basil really clearly, just realising you couldn't see that on the screen now. Right, so nice fresh basil leaves, little bit wilted, but they're going to be cooked anyway, and they only wilt because they get a little bit warm. All right, so chop these up nice and fine so that they can go into your mix. And what you're looking for is something cut up fine enough that when it's squished together in your meatballs, it doesn't take over the meatball or destroy the meatball. So that's the only thing really that we're after. The only rule with this recipe is that everything that goes in this bowl can be squished right down and isn't going to take up too much room in a meatball. So these are quite large stems here, so I'm not going to bother putting those in. And turn my meats, and you can see this starts to sort of crunch down, and that's because basil has a lot of moisture in it, so it does sort of go quite dark and squishy. It smells, shame we don't have smelly vision, smells gorgeous. Okay, but like I said, you can put anything in this, so pick flavours that you like. I like basil in with my meatballs because I think it adds a really nice flavour, so I'm just going to pop that into the bowl with those. The classic, it is Italian, so I've got a bit of a cheat, which is garlic powder, so I'm just going to sprinkle that in all over. Something my mother taught me, I always put a bit of mixed spice in because it's got a bit of a sweetness to it. It smells a bit like baking cakes and stuff, so I put a little bit of that in whenever I do mince because it does give it just a bit of a fuller flavour. And I've not got much left, but oregano, obviously a classic Italian herb, that's going in as well. You see I haven't portioned those out, I've literally just chucked them in the bowl. That's how this goes. It's a really nice, experimental, easy recipe to do. Try and remember the things you did put in if you like what you did, but also helps you decide what not to put in next time if you don't like what you did. Now, one of the things with this is that they don't bind together very well. If you've got really fresh mince like I've got, you can see it's almost like a squishy dough, so I could bind it together and make little balls out of that on its own, but it's likely to fall apart once it goes into the pan. So what I'm going to do on top of that is I'm going to place an egg in. So I'm going to break my egg into a jug beforehand. And whisk that egg up. Okay, so you can see that's nicely frothy and all yellow. Now it's really slimy when you add the egg in, so I would advise a little bit at a time. Oops, I've got some on the work surface there, I need to be conscious of that. All right, so you can see it's really slimy as you mix it together. I might not even need all of that egg actually, I might not add any more to that, it's probably enough. Oh no. Soon enough it starts to feel like meat again rather than slimy egg. So I'm going to pop that last little bit of egg in. As I say, that would just help bind them together when you make your meatballs. Fun one to do together as a family, so you could make them all together. Often my daughter will help me, so we will quite often make meatballs together. And then all you got to do is turn them into little balls. So you pull out a little spoonful at a time, roll it in the palm of your hands, and try and make it into a little ball. Here's one. And if you try and always sort of do it to the centre of your hand, and you sort of get a feel for them so that they end up all about the same sort of size. If they're too big, they take too long to cook, and then they will start to fall apart. So I'm going to finish making these and popping these together. I'm hoping I'm going to get about 15, maybe 20 out of this batch. And then I'll show you how we're going to do our pasta and meatball sauce in a bit. Right, so you can see these are now my meatballs all finished, ready to go. I'm actually going to put them in the fridge and I can use them for later. If I was putting them in for a long time, I would make sure they're covered with cling film, so if any juices or anything like that were to come out and nothing else in the fridge could get to them or cross-contaminate them, but they're only going in there for a few minutes, so I'm just going to leave them open on the board like that. They've got a nice space to go into. Right, so my meatballs are now back out of the fridge and they're ready to go into the pan, and my vegetables have all been chopped and they're all ready to go. So what I'm going to do is start to heat up my pan. Okay, and I'm going to first of all do what we call sealing with the meatballs. So I'm going to cook those on the hob to start off with. No vegetables or anything like that in the pan to start off with. I'm just going to put in a little bit of oil to make sure they don't stick. Okay, and then we're just going to place the meatballs into the pan. Now they will brown, essentially, is the aim, all around the outside. Okay. Because the pan is not boiling hot at the moment, you literally just see me just turn it on, I can actually pop these in one by one. When it comes to taking them out, they're going to be really hot and I need to take them out in between cooking processes, so I shall show you a little trick for that when I get to that. Right, so you can see and hear them sizzling now. Okay, so they are sizzling away, so I'm just going to place in my last few. Okay, so we want to keep them moving around, and there you go, you can start to see that they're changing colour, okay, and they're starting to get that whiteness through them. Alright, so you can see as the meat starts to cook, it starts to get this sort of brown whiteness to it, and I want that all over them. Once that's all over them, I will take them out and pop them back on my board, which I'm going to wipe off, clean off while they're just heating up now. And then when they're back on my board, I will then put my veg in and then put these back in afterwards. Right, so you can start to see now that they have all browned off, so they've all gone brown in colour as such. So they're all sealed. Yeah, and I'm just going to bring them out and pop them onto my now clean chopping board, because I've washed that off while I was cooking those. You could see some have gone a bit flat on one side, and it's because generally it's just the way they rest in the pan while they're cooking. And I've even had 1 or 2 disasters that have stuck to the bottom, so you can see some of the meat on the bottom as well. All those meat juices and bits like that on the bottom, they were all good. So I'm going to turn my heat right down now, because those meat juices on the bottom are going to be what we add to the flavouring of our sauce. So we're going to start the sauce in the pan. Ow, that's a bit hot. Once I've taken the meatballs out. Okay, sorry, trying to do this as quick as I can. Right, so you can see there's lots of sort of fat and meat juices in the bottom of there. We want all of that for these sauces to go with these ingredients as well. So now what I'm going to do is add in my peppers and my vegetables. My onion, my carrot, all of those ingredients in there at once. Add a little bit more oil. And I can now turn the heat back up a little bit to get these going. Now at this point you might want to add in some other flavourings. So one that's quite popular in our house to add to a bolognese sauce, Worcestershire sauce. This is actually a new bottle. There we go. You can also, I've also had recommended Marmite, so that's something else you can add into. You can see why I took the meatballs out. It's too difficult to stir it when you've got the meatballs in here as well, and to cook these down well enough. Right, I also have a tin of chopped tomatoes, as I said, 1 of our 5 a day. So place that into there as well. Some of these better chopped than others. Depending on what you've got in the cupboard, you could now add some tomato puree. You can even add, which I've done in the past, some ketchup to add a bit more juice to it. I'm going to put some organic tomato pesto in there, so that'll add a little bit extra herbs in there too. But it's sort of one of those that generally, what you've got in the cupboard, if it's got a bit of a tomato and Italian origin, it generally works. Right, I'm going to add some more oregano to this, which is what we've already got in the meatballs. And then I can just pop my meatballs back in. Now if you have a lid for your pan, which I do have a lid for this saucepan, you could leave a lid on it. If you don't, you can just leave it open, but what you might find is if you leave it open, all your liquid will start to cook away. You want to probably leave this on the whole, just cooking off a little bit. So what you don't want to happen is for all of that juice to disappear. And you can see now there is actually more juice than it looked originally. So you can see that that dish is now settled with all of the meatballs, covered mostly in liquid, okay, which is what we're after. If you need to add more juice, you can always add a little bit of hot water to it, but really you don't want it too runny, so try not to add too much more. But you might want to turn it right down. Right. I'm now going to put that to the side and I'm going to start on the pasta.